Good morning or afternoon, and welcome to the North Meck High School Algebra 1 EOC video clips. Today's lesson is entitled, or is objective 4.02, Quadratic Functions. Again, 4.02, Quadratic Functions. This is video number 10. Alright, as you can see on the board, there are 4 problems there about quadratics. Problem number 1 says find the vertex of y equals negative 4x squared minus 16x minus 3. Is it a max or a min? First of all, please remember that the graph of a quadratic is a parabola, and if that quadratic has a negative in front of the x squared term, then that quadratic opens down. The parabola opens down. So now what we're going to do is, if that parabola opens down, then the vertex is a maximum, because the parabola, if it opens down, then the vertex, which is this point, is the highest point on the graph. So again, if the parabola opens down, then the vertex, which is here, if that parabola opens down, then the vertex is a maximum. If the parabola opens up, then the vertex is a minimum. Now, how do you decide that the parabola opens down? Once again, if there's a negative in front of the x squared term, then the parabola opens down and the vertex is a maximum. So this answer is maximum. Again, if the parabola opens down, then the vertex is at the top and it is a maximum. It's the highest point on the graph. If the parabola opens up, then the vertex is a minimum. It's the lowest point on the graph. So that's very easy to decide. Look at the number in front of the x squared term. If that number is positive, the parabola opens up, your vertex is a minimum. If that number is negative, your parabola opens down and your vertex is a maximum. Problem number 2. Find the x-intercepts of y equals x squared minus x minus 6. Now, to find your x-intercepts, you need to remember what x-intercepts are. X-intercepts are where the graph crosses the x-axis. Again, x-intercepts are where the graph crosses the x-axis. So I'm going to take this graph and put it in on the graphing calculator. In order to do that, I'm going to hit y equals on the graphing calculator. I'm going to type the function in. I'm hitting y equals. I'm going to type the function in. X squared minus x minus 6. When I hit graph, I'm going to sketch the graph. So I can see the graph. All right, now I'm going to sketch the graph on my paper. The graph is a parabola that opens up. I already knew the parabola was going to open up because this number in front is positive. So again, the graph is a parabola that opens up. The vertex would be a minimum. And that's not what we're looking for in this problem. We're looking for where it crosses the x-axis. Now you can look at this and see that if each one of these tick marks represent 1, then this graph crosses the x-axis at 1, 2, 3. So 3 is an x-intercept, and at negative 1, negative 2. So you have 2 x-intercepts. The graph crosses the x-axis at positive 3 and negative 2. How did I get that? I punched y equals x squared minus x minus 6 into my graphing calculator, hit graph, the graph came up, and I'm only looking for where the graph crosses the x-axis. Those are your x-intercepts. All right, number 3. H equals negative 16t squared plus 56t. This formula, or a formula like it, is used a lot in your quadratic word problems. There are essentially 3 problems that they will ask you, or 3 questions that they will ask you. They will ask you to put this in on the calculator and find the maximum height. They'll ask you to put this in on the calculator and find out how long it took to get to your maximum height. They'll ask you to put this in and find out when it hit the ground. Alright, so I'm going to put this in on the graphing calculator. I'm going to hit y equals. I'm going to type in negative 16 x squared, negative 16x squared, plus 56x. Plus 56x. I'm going to hit graph. Okay, now I see my graph, not a lot of it, but I recognize what it is. All right, the graph appears to be going up and coming back down. The tick marks here are 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, immediately I knew that this was going to be a parabola because of the square. That means I'm going to get a parabola. All right, the negative 16 in front of the x squared term meant that the parabola was going to face or open down. Now, when you're hitting a ball, what this represents is something going up and then coming back down. This point right here is your maximum height. Now, on my graph, my original graph, I cannot see that. So what I'm going to do is hit table, second graph. Now, I'm looking for the highest point that the graph went to before it started coming down. This point, according to my table, is 2, 48. So, in my table, what's the maximum height? The maximum height is 48. 48. After all, in this problem, x, y, x represents your time, and y represents your height. So, again, the x coordinate is your time, the y coordinate is your height. So what was the maximum height? The highest thing it went up to, the highest y was 48 feet. And then how long did it take to get there? 2 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever your units are. But it took 2 to get there. So that answer is 2. Now, when did it hit the ground? Hit the ground means that it went up. It came back down, and right here is where it hit the ground, where it crosses the x-axis. On my graph calculator, I'm going back to graph, and I'm going to look at where it crosses the x-axis. It crosses the x-axis shortly after 3. So this is at approximately 3 seconds. So a little bit after 3, it crosses the ground. You can see it cross. Or it hits the ground. It crosses the x-axis. All right, problem number 4. Simply to solve a quadratic. Solve a quadratic. Get a 0 on one side. So we have x squared minus 14x. I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. So that this becomes plus 45 equals 0. X squared minus 14x plus 45 equals 0. Now you already know how to factor this. So factor this. X and x, we have minus 9 and minus 5 equals 0. Once you find your factors, you let each factor equal 0. So all I did was let this one equal 0, and I let this factor equal 0. Now I'm going to solve for x, add 9, so I get x equals 9. Add 5, I get x equals 5. So my 2 answers, I knew I was looking for 2 answers because of this 2. My 2 answers are 9, 5. And then close them in brackets to represent 2 answers. Again, my 2 answers are 9, 5. So once again, our job here was simply to solve a quadratic. When you're solving a quadratic, you're looking for 2 answers. Okay, to get your 2 answers, get a 0 on one side, so move the 10 over first. Factor it. Set each factor, you're going to get 2 factors, set those factors equal to 0 and solve. Now you can get more than 2 here, but if you do, that'll be a number out here if it's a quadratic. So, back up to number 1 really quick. Vertex, max, or min. Find the x-intercepts, the places where it crosses the x-axis. Solve a word problem. Maximum height is just your vertex, your y-coordinate of your vertex. How long it hits the ground, or how long it touches, or how long it takes to get to the maximum height is your x value. X value is always your time. And at what time did it hit the ground? Approximately 3 seconds. 4th problem, simply solve a quadratic. Get a 0 on one side. Move the other numbers and things over. Factor, set each factor equal to 0. On the next board, I have additional practice. You have problem number 1, find the vertex, is it a max or min? Problem number 2, find the x-intercept. Problem number 3, you're given a new equation, maximum height, How long? When did it hit the ground? And problem number 4, you're given a quadratic that you need to solve. If you complete these additional practice problems and give them to your Algebra 1 teacher, he or she will be sure to give you credit. Thank you so much and have a beautiful afternoon.